Hello and welcome to another edition of Here's the Pitch, sponsored by Masses Restaurants in St. Louis. There's 5 locations. STOmasses.com is their website. You know that. If you're driving through St. Louis, if you're watching this from out of town, check them out. They're open. COVID's over. My wife hates when I say COVID's over, but yes, go in. They're open. You can just sit down at the bar and enjoy a beverage and tell them Brad sent you. And today I'm very excited. We've got Ian Halperin here, and Ian, of course, is an author, many books. Celebrity author. He goes undercover. He's undercover right now, I think. You don't show your eyes, do you, in any of your interviews?
Yeah, I sort of keep up the moniker. I think I've only taken it off once when I did Entertainment Tonight, Brad. And I was going to walk, and they did this elaborate shoot, and the producer, Fran Weinstein, begged and pleaded with me. Samantha Harris was interviewing me. And you know what? They were so nice, so I took off the glasses. But and you had Michael Jackson's videographer, Rodney. I'm friends with them all now. They're great people. But, you know, I stick to my guns. And first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your podcast. You've definitely had great guests in the past, so it's really, truly an honor to join that long list. And it's going to be fun.
Yeah, no, I thank you very much. And there's so many books you've written. I'm going to get into those. But the one that's out right now is Controversy, Sex, Lies, and Dirty Money. There's 2 volumes. The first one was a Jeffrey Epstein type book there. And the second volume is The Beatles. I'm going to get into both of them. The Beatles one is who broke up the Beatles. Everyone says Yoko. But so 45, 50 years later, we're still talking about it. And there's a new book. And it's not Yoko, according to Ian Halperin. I know you probably don't want to give it away, but maybe.
I'll say it definitely wasn't Yoko. In fact, it was all misportrayed because she actually got along with Paul McCartney very well. They would be in the studio talking a lot about world affairs, politics. For some reason, they pinned it on Yoko because she was an aspiring musician herself. But there was a lot of financial involved in it. And the Controversy Volume 2, which you alluded to, Who Killed the Beatles, it's really a period piece about the last year before the Beatles announced their breakup. And you had many people involved, including Linda McCartney's father, Lee Eastman, Alan Klein. And I'll say this, 100% it wasn't Yoko. And I do reveal in the book, I'll save it for the book, who actually broke them up. And it was a woman, so I'm sure most people could figure out who it was.
Yeah, it was, well, the Wings came after, I would assume. So just think about Wings.
Were you a Wings fan, Brad?
The older, so it was way before my time. I grew up when Paul was doing stuff with Michael Jackson, which we'll talk about, ironically, say. But the older I get, I think the Wings stuff's not too terrible. You know, I think it actually is better than it. I think everybody was, if you come off the Beatles, it's got to sound like the Beatles, and it didn't. But if you listen to it now, there's some things there.
Yeah, it was pretty well produced, actually. McCartney, look, he's really got a unique voice, and the production values went through the roof with Wings. There were very good engineers involved, very good musicians, although most members of Wings would say there was one musician who wasn't so good, which was Linda McCartney. But look, may she rest in peace, obviously. But a lot of controversy surrounding her role and Paul. She was obviously influential in making Paul disband the group. Her and her father thought he'd have a better shot at a solo career or with Wings. And who can argue? I mean, Wings did have a lot of commercial success.
So you do a ton of interviews for these books. How many did you do, and who was the one real good get, and who was the one, maybe was it Paul that you did? Who were you really hoping to get and you didn't get, and who was the one you were waiting on in the interview?
Well, for the Beatles, usually I interview everyone connected, like, with Jackson, I interviewed Jackson. But for the Beatles, it was mainly just producers and people who worked with the group, and people who, because it's more a financial thing, this period piece. So I really had to trace former employees and former witnesses who saw them, and just to tear to shreds the theory that Yoko actually broke up the group. And there's eyewitnesses in the book who recount that, no, it certainly wasn't Yoko.
People can get that on Amazon, right? And is that kind of
the... Yeah, both of them are on Amazon. And the first volume deals with the sociopath Jeffrey Epstein, and it's a lengthy book. I'm the only journalist to ever interview the sociopath. It was supposed to be like a 20-minute interview. It lasted almost 7 hours. And a lot of people are trying to stop the book. I've had flack from the British royal family because I out Prince Andrew as being a serial abuser of underage girls. And I also, did you watch the Oprah interview with Meghan and Harry?
Didn't want to, but my wife made me, yes.
There you
go.
It
was entertaining. I will say it was entertaining. I was entertained. I will say that.
It was entertaining, but I detail in the book how the British royal family played Oprah like a fiddle. They wanted that interview to happen to misdirect all the attention from Prince Andrew. So they were thrilled about Meghan, Harry, and Oprah being in cahoots for this interview. And because it really put Prince Andrew on the back burner. And if the allegations ever get out properly about Prince Andrew, it really could sink the monarchy.
They were just floating along. After Diana, it was pretty smooth sailing over there. And then it's not been. And Well,
they had their hands full with Diana because they were accused of murder by Mohammed Al-Fayed in the Diana case. And ironically, in the book, I reveal for the first time, it was Jeffrey Epstein, the sociopath, who actually introduced his business associate, Dodi Fayed, to Princess Diana. So technically, if not for Jeffrey Epstein, Princess Diana might be alive today.
What? So when did you interview him, and was it when he was in jail, the idea for this book?
Before he went to jail a few years before. But at length, he told me, Brad, that he was living in the wrong era. He wished he'd lived 100 years ago so he could have dated 12-year-olds. Clearly the man was deranged. First, he comes off as charming and sort of affable, but as the interview wore on, his true colors were revealed.
The big story, I think, with him was his involvement with the Clintons. How much did you get into that?
Yeah, I actually do, Brad, because in the book, I have corroboration. The New York Times reported that Slick Willie was on the Lolita Express 26 times. And in my book, I say it was actually 61, but Epstein urged his handlers to erase the flight log.
Did Epstein know that you were going to do sort of a tell-all type thing, or how was he involved with it?
No, he was actually a source for one of my previous books. So at the urging of a mutual friend, he agreed to meet with me. As you know, one of those, according to an unnamed source, well, he was that unnamed source. I agreed to keep him off the record, but as time wore on, I realized what a sleazebag he was and his partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell. So I finally outed him. I spent several years finishing the book and researching it, and I must have interviewed about 800 people for that book, Controversy, Sex, Lies, and Dirty Money, Volume 1.
Yeah, so again, that's on Amazon. You've mentioned on many podcasts, so we're going to dig into the Howard Stern stuff here a little bit.
Are you a Stern fan?
I was. I don't listen now. I was a huge fan, 90s, 2000s.
Remember when I was on the show, or you don't remember?
A little bit of dancing, I think, happened during your time. Yeah.
You have a good memory, man. You got a good memory.
So you were only on twice, though, right? You were promoting two different...
A couple of times, yeah. But at length, Howard kept me in the studio for an hour or over an hour. He was nice to me. And was one-on-one with him. But it's incredible that you remember the dancing. No, what happened with me and Howard was simple. I started going on his show, and then my manager called me and said, the Opie and Anthony show wants me on. And I said, I really don't want to do that. It's not my cup of tea to go in with a bunch of comics. And my manager said, no, I spoke to Gary, and it's cool. You'll still go on Howard, which didn't turn out to be the case. Howard would never have me on the show again after I went on O&A. And then I went on O&A for 10 years, man. I had to go through that. Have you ever listened to O&A?
I was never. I like Anthony. But I never really got into it. I can honestly say never.
Anthony's a nice guy. It's just an incredible story. I used to go on with guys like Jim Jeffries and Bill Burr. All these comics. I'm not a comic, and I had to go toe-to-toe with these guys. And I used to fight with Anthony all the time, but apparently it was all staged because when Anthony started his own network about 5 years ago, his producer called me the first week and said, Anthony wants you on the show. I said, really? We just spent like 10 years fighting on the air together. And we actually became decent friends. We've had some good conversations, and I respect Anthony Cumia. He's an amazing talent. He comes in and he does a monologue just off the cuff, no notes, nothing. And, you know, in the post O&A, he was really nice to me. I've been on his show many times on the Compound Media Network, and it's been a whole different vibe. So no problem.
Yeah, and just because I didn't know anything about them, I started researching and just, you know, he was a caller, or he was a guy who came in and then became a broadcaster. He's really good. I really love when he's on with Joe Rogan. I think he does a really good job when he's on Joe's.
Yeah, he's been on with, are you a Rogan fan?
I enjoy, I mean, 3 hours is a long time, and being stoned half the time on some of the interviews is not my fit. But there's always stuff in there that is entertaining.
Are you going to soon make his type of coin? That's the question.
Spotify, where are Spotify? They're right over here. They're coming over this way. We'll see. Joe didn't expect to do that.
With O&A, I really didn't enjoy being on the show all those years. And they used to call me all the time to come on. I had a big following there, and I really dreaded going on the show because I knew it was going to be schoolyard humor and banter, and, you know, everything would be coming at me. But I've been on every show under the planet pretty much. And the only one, like, I'd be the front story Entertainment Tonight several times. Nobody would recognize me. I've been on Stern, nobody cares. But O&A, I'd go to a bowling alley and I'd say, I want to rent shoes. They'd recognize my voice. I remember in Ventura from O&A. So, you know, it was, I guess they had a huge following, and like a huge cult following. And people would come up to me in the streets and chase me with cameras. And so, look, God bless them both. I just really, it was a weird vibe at the show. Tim Sabian, who was the producer of the Stern Show. Do you remember Tim Sabian?
Tim is a dear friend now here at the podcast.
Tim's a good friend of yours. Has he been on your show?
He's been on two and a half times, I think I could say. Because
really?
Yeah, he's definitely.
Okay, so Tim Sabian's a great guy. And when I used to go to Sirius, I used to see Tim. He never said a word to me in 10 years. And all of a sudden, Tim Sabian is calling me when I'm in South America. I thought, what's this guy calling me for? I thought, is he suing me or something? Like, he never said a word to me. And actually, I got to know him. He's a great guy. We've become very good friends. And he said, look, Ian, I was just out of my mind there with work. I'd get there 4 a.m, and he apologized. He said, I'm sorry if I never really spoke to you, but I just had so much on my plate. And Tim, I think you'd admit, is just a wonderful guy.
Midwestern guy like myself. That's this Midwestern hospitality, Minneapolis and St. Louis. That's probably why.
Well, St. Louis and Minneapolis, they're great people. There's a syndicated radio guy in St. Louis. What was it? He always called me to be on his show when I'd release a book. He's like a late night, I think.
George Norrie? George Norrie?
No. Can you give me another one?
Late night? No.
Oh, he's famous.
Jim White?
I forget it.
I don't know.
I forget his name. And then there's, in Chicago, another buddy of mine, Mancow. Have you heard of Mancow?
Definitely know Mancow, yes.
You know, Mancow, a lot of people misinterpreted Mancow because nicest guy you could meet off the air. And he used to want me to fly there to go on his show. I said, Mancow, like, this is fucking radio. And he said, no, we want you in studio. So I used to fly to be on a radio show. But Mancow's a great guy. And, you know, Mancow, like, mixes his own show. Like, as he's speaking into the mic, he's standing up and he's on the board. Great guy. I met a lot of the greats. I mean, even before the Stern era, I'd gone Joey Reynolds when I was young, who was one of the first shock jocks. Joe Franklin, do you remember him?
From Because of Howard, yes, the old New York guy. Yes.
Of course. Joe was a great guy. I'd see him a lot when I was in New York. So it's changed. It's changed. Like anybody could pull up with a mic now and become a broadcaster, which is good. The more, the merrier. But it used to be you had to beg to be on these shows, and they had you, at their mercy. And today, it's the other way around. But look, the more content, the better, and let the people judge what they want to hear.
Yeah. So I wanted to get back to we have, of course, the Google machine is easy to find easy stories. Epstein followed Howard Stern around. Tell me this story. This is a good one.
Did you find that on Google?
I believe when I'm doing my research, I see this one and I'm like, okay, intrigued.
Stern. He was obsessed with Stern. Epstein told me the only guy in Manhattan or New York, the state of New York, who could get more pussy than him, quote unquote, he said, was the king of all media, Howard Stern. He was obsessed with Stern. He followed him. He stalked him. Apparently, he has photos of him from his computer. I never saw those, but his right-hand man told me that. So he was really obsessed. He was obsessed with Stern, Princess Diana, Carla Bruni, who was married to the French president, former French president Nicolas Sarkozy. And he was just an enigmatic nutcase, man.
So what did that come up in your interviews with him, and what was and I'm sure Howard has to be a little freaked out when he hears something like that. I'm sure there's a lot of people like that, though, that he doesn't even know about.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, he just said, look, Stern was the man in New York, and he was obsessed with him. He listened to him all the time. He said he thought that Howard was a bit of a phony. He thought Howard had a bit of a dark past, but he never really proved that to me. Look, my dealings with Howard were nice. Howard was nice to me when I was on the show. When you walk into the studio, they say no cameras, nothing. I'd always ask Howard for a photo. He always obliged. And he'd bring Robin in the photo. I have nothing against Howard except the fact I think his show has changed dramatically. And he used to mock and make fun of the Hollywood A-listers. And now he sort of wanted to become one and is sort of pandering to them. So who is the real Howard Stern?
And were you writing a book, and what happened? It looked like you were kind of putting one together there a few years ago.
Well, it's all in the Epstein book. I mixed it. My publisher, Simon & Schuster, they didn't want a Stern book. They published Beth Stern, and they also had an option on Howard. So they said, it's amazing because my previous book was the Kardashians, and they published the Kardashians, Kris Jenner. And I said to the publisher at SNS, I said, I guess you don't want this one. They said, no, we do both sides. But in the Stern case, no, they only do one side.
What would your angle have been? I mean, with this, you do tell-alls, you do undercover. Like, where would you have gone with this? How far and how deep?
With Howard?
Yeah.
Well, I went pretty deep. I mean, I discovered a lot of things about him, which is in the current book. Controversy, Sex, Lies, and Dirty Money. One of the biggest things I uncovered was his relationship with Sinatra. Sinatra hated him because Howard used to have these skits mocking Sinatra when he had Alzheimer's. And Sinatra put out a hit on Howard. He wanted to kill him.
Well, it didn't happen, but he did get someone, right? He got someone who looked just like him.
Apparently some guy who had the same birthday. I think Howard's birthday is January 12th. And looked like Howard, was knocked off. And they think it was because of the Sinatra hit. They got the wrong guy.
Good for Howard. You got to think Howard's shaking in his shoes when he hears a story like that, though, right?
Well, Howard's always a bit paranoid. Howard doesn't come out of his bunker until like 7 at night. And but look, Howard's not a bad guy. There's just been a lot of disparaging of Howard by ex-employees like Scott the engineer, not so much Grillo, but Stuttering John for sure. There's been a plethora of them who have really criticized the work environment at Sirius, notably Howard.
But there's a lot more that don't say anything, and it's sort of odd that, man, it could be, hey, just let I want to do something different. I don't need to talk about Howard, but there's a lot that don't want to talk about their time there. They just will not.
Yeah, there's a lot that don't, but still, you have people like Jackie Martley, Stuttering John, Steve Grillo. They're more than willing to talk about Howard and Scott the engineer. Tim Sabian had a rough time there. His father was dying of cancer, and Howard said, "Oh, I think we should part ways." I mean, that's not great labor relations. To me, it's more emotional terrorism.
No, yeah, definitely. Now, this was way before you started checking into him, but I always wondered what happened with that marriage. Have you ever been able to figure out, they're doing this, Private Parts comes out, they're a happy couple, and a year and a half later, they're not.
He just wasn't happy. I mean, had grown apart, and it was time to move on. Howard was miserable, and like a lot of people in relationships, and he moved on and sort of found the love of his life, although there's rumors about that marriage now that I've heard. No proof, so I don't want to get too into it. But, Howard Stern is a legend, and he really broke new barriers in the radio and communications business and set a huge template. So love him or hate him, you can't argue with his success.
And he's sort of kind of bulletproof because he did a lot of stuff in the 90s that you would get canceled for now, but it's seemingly, that tape's out there. You go to YouTube and watch it in blackface.
A lot of people on the show say the Me Too movement would have had a field day with Howard in this show. But look, somehow he remained bulletproof. Him and Ellen DeGeneres, they're the two big emotional terrorists now in the news. I mean, they've both been outed in the media. Ellen is stepping down. Let's see how much longer Howard. I mean, he signed a new contract, but let's see if he even fulfills the whole contract.
We could call this podcast, Have You Heard from Artie Lange? I ask every one of my guests because he's missing. He's always out there, and now he's...
I haven't, and I like Artie a lot. He was very nice to me, but I haven't heard a word.
So there's a documentary I have in my queue about Kurt Cobain, and I still haven't watched it, but you did write a book about who killed...
Hold on. Which documentary about Kurt?
I don't... so not the montage of hate, but it's something else. Son of...
Soaked in Bleach.
Soaked in Bleach. Is that you? Is that your... Okay. I'm going to watch this.
Yeah, I participated in the Nick Broomfield movie, Kurt and Courtney, and I did my own that was distributed by Paramount. It was called The Cobain Case, and now they're Soaked in Bleach. Look, I'm not going to talk too much about the Cobain stuff because after 2 movies and 2 books, I've had it to here. But read the book, Love and Death, The Murder of Kurt Cobain. It was a New York Times bestseller that I wrote along with Max Wallace. And there's a lot of compelling evidence there that points to the fact that Kurt Cobain did not commit suicide.
Yeah, and my only question, I guess, would be when does this come to your mind that, okay, a lot of people are talking that he didn't. Is that what it was? You just kind of heard this murmur of people saying, hey, this looks weird.
There's scientific, forensic, pathological evidence. It's so deep, that investigation. Like, everyone should read it if they're interested in Cobain. It's not just he says, she says. This is all based on medical information.
And then, of course, the book that put
police reports.
I'm looking forward to watch and reading. And then the book that puts you on the map is the Michael Jackson book, Unmasked and the Final Days of Michael Jackson. You predict 6 months before he dies that he's going to die. You did a lot of interviews for that, but I this is the one thing I think I've heard you say that I was most intrigued by, even 10 years later, because there's so many people now coming out saying they were molested. And you're saying he was not a child molester. There's no proof.
Yeah, I mean, again, I really go on the forensic evidence, and people came out like a couple of years ago, like 9 years after Michael had passed. He's not here to defend himself. Look, he was acquitted in the Chandler case in '93. The only reason why Michael settled, I even got access. I got a copy of the insurance document. His insurance company forced him to settle. They couldn't afford to keep going. Michael Jackson certainly was enigmatic, and he certainly looked as the role of a child molester, but he was a 5-year-old in a 50-year-old body. And all these people coming out, I say emphatically, it's a cash grab. Because I really looked at the evidence in my book, Unmasked, and also in my movie, Gone Too Soon.
The other thing about Michael Jackson that's interesting is the Lisa Marie, the marriage, and well, that interesting. You talk about. I mean, a lot of people wondered what it was, and I think you got to the bottom of it. It was arranged.
With the Scientology, yeah. They wanted Michael to become the de facto leader of the church. So here comes Lisa Marie, a devout Scientologist. And if Michael would have accepted Scientology and embraced it, Tom Cruise would have never got so as big as he did with Scientology. Tom Cruise now is the de facto leader of the church, but it would have been Michael Jackson. But he didn't buy into Scientology.
I mean, when you're writing these books, it's hours upon hours of interviews. How much fun is that? I mean, is it a lot of work? Do you feel like, because then you might get someone who says something and you're like, shit, now I gotta talk to that guy to get to.
You're right. Oh, that's a good question, Brad. I'll say this: I've written many books, and in hindsight, I feel like I've been writing term papers my whole life, and I'm in university. It's very laborious and extremely time-consuming because no matter how good the book is, if there's one error in there, you're toast. That's the only reason why I've lasted this long with major publishers, is because nobody's proven me wrong. And, you know, I'm respected by my peers. Yeah, I might put on a show, and, you know, I play the clown a bit to sell books. Of course, you have to stand out. But I take my work very seriously, and investigative journalism is my forte. But it is extremely time-consuming, laborious, could be lonely at times. It used to be a lot of fun, and today I wouldn't say it's as much fun, you know, because you really have to take risks and go outside the box to really get the story behind the story. And you know, but once I get going, I'm fine. I'll bitch about it before I even write a word or interview anyone. But once I get going, it's like the first day on the job, and I feel energetic and enthusiastic.
So what's next? How about a Trump thing? Is Trump on your next?
No, I won't do Trump. It's been done too many times. There's not much left to do. I mean, you know, I covered all the big ones from Princess Di to Jackson to Brangelina, Scientology, Whitney Houston, Prince, George Michael. You know, I really don't want to start delving into Drake and Rihanna. It's not my cup of tea, and Bieber. I'd rather do something else.
But you did spend some time with the Pope. Was this in person? And tell me how you go about.
You did your research. That is true.
How do you go about that? Hey, Vatican, it's Ian. Yep, coming by Thursday.
Oh man, I could give you a good scoop about the Pope, but I can't. I will say this: I met him twice. He was very gracious. The second time I met him, I wanted to interview Tony Blair for my movie, and Blair agreed to do it if he came along the ride to the Pope. So he shows up at the Vatican, I interview him, and I say, okay, Tony, we're going to walk. We have to walk through the gates, and there's tens of thousands of people every day outside the Vatican gates. It's a secret entrance to meet the Pope. So he said, okay, and I said, your bodyguards can't come. He said, really? I said, yeah, there's no use for them. So we walked, a few of us, to the Pope with Tony Blair in front of tens of thousands of Vatican worshipers. And to my knowledge, not one person had recognized Blair. That's incredible.
I mean, once you're once you're out of the public spotlight, it's over.
Yeah.
No one cares.
This is like 3 years ago, and nobody recognized him.
Well, I appreciate your time again. Controversy, Sex, Lies, Dirty Money. That's out on Amazon right now. So I was under this understanding it was more of an Epstein, Prince Andrew book, but you've got a lot more in there than
Well,
just.
the first volume's mainly about Epstein and Andrew, and then you have a lot about Diana, about Howard, all these people who were indirectly or directly connected to Epstein, Clinton, Gates, Jeff Bezos. They're all in there. There's a lot of names in this one and a lot of revelations. I make it clear at the beginning of the book, I'm not doing a rehash of what's already been in the news. It's all new stuff.
Yeah, that's like you just said. It's hard to come up with news. You just said I don't want to do Drake and Bieber. So I guess you just sort of watch the news and try to figure out what's next, or how does it work for you? What's your process?
Well, doing the Epstein thing, the most atrocious form of human behavior, in my opinion, is child sex trafficking. It should be in the same conversation as racism, sexism, or homophobia. For some reason, it's not, and we got to get it in there. So I'm devoting a lot of time now to combating child sex trafficking. I'm working on a couple of movies about it. I'm donating my research from the Epstein Project to it. And look, it doesn't get worse than that for any parent, any child watching this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's good that people talk about it because it's something you don't even think about. But all of your works are on Amazon. Is there anything you'd like to add? I always like to give.
I'm just confused why the St. Louis Blues got eliminated so quickly.
They weren't so good this year. Not so good.
And I'm also perplexed why there's no NBA team in St. Louis. There used to be, right?
And they left in 1958, yes, and there's the thought that we won't support it. I'll just be honest. There's a lot of people who think we're just too white. There's that, and yeah, I mean we've lost the football team twice, so there's not a lot of NBA teams.
Well, you guys support the Blues to the maximum. I know a lot of people connected to the Blues organization over the years, and they're fanatics with the Blues. Here's how I bring back a St. Louis basketball team. I would apply for expansion, and if you get it in a couple of years, look, if LeBron's eliminated by the Lakers this year, with the Lakers, if Phoenix takes them out or somebody else takes them out before round 3, I predict the Lakers are going to deal LeBron in the offseason. I don't see why they'd keep him. They might as well go with a youth movement. They already won one. And if I was St. Louis, I'd start a team and bring them back at 38, 39 years old. Start from there and put, few people around them. It will be a show. You'll get some interest. And then I build from there. But it amazes me St. Louis doesn't have a basketball team. For the life of me, if they could support hockey, they could certainly support basketball.
Well, there's a book here, Ian, because I would say there's not enough corporate sponsors. There's not an owner that, we barely had to scrape together to get a soccer team because we lost the football team. So we're getting MLS. There's that thought that there's just not enough corporate sponsorships plus the man or woman who wants to own.
Craziness. Who was it who brought them to when the Rams came to St. Louis? They did fantastic and then they crumbled, but that's a lot of people to fill. But to fill 15,000 a night in St. Louis for an NBA game is a no-brainer. If they could do it for the Blues, they could do it for an NBA team.
Well, I will tell you, if you're ever interested in writing a book, there's something in the Rams leaving St. Louis because they told fans, no, we're staying, and then they had this big show where they told season ticket holders to come down. People were crying. And they literally left.
Screwed them over.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And
wasn't the owner a woman of the Rams? Was it Georgia Frontier? Who was it?
Yeah, Georgia was the owner. She died, but when she came here, this fella named Stan Kroenke, who's from Missouri, he got 40% of the team. That was basically how they got the Rams to come here. So when she died, he bought the rest and then started the LA thing. It was 2008. This all happened in 2008. I was a season ticket holder from 95 to 2011, and that's when they started going 1 in 14, 1 in 15. And I just said, I'm not buying seats until I hear him say we're staying, and they would never was said.
Yeah. So they dupe the fans, but when it comes to the NBA, folks, St. Louis has a rich tradition of basketball, And the NBA not having a team in St. Louis is like McDonald's not having a Big Mac. It makes no sense whatsoever. And we got to bring it back to St. Louis before we put it back in Seattle or somewhere else. St. Louis, man, deserves a basketball team.
I agree.
Minnesota could have one. St. Louis surely can support an NBA team.
And that's what I would say. The St. Louis community fans would go. So it's not, what I'm saying is corporations. There's just not a lot of that money. But let's get it together.
Maybe when LeBron, he's going to want to emulate his idol Jordan, and maybe let's get him to buy the team. He's a billionaire now, LeBron. Maybe he'd be the perfect owner for St. Louis. Who's the GOAT, in your opinion?
Jordan.
Now, if you were starting one team, you're the GM, and you get to choose anybody in their rookie year, which player do you start with to build around?
Today?
Yeah.
I'm not big in the NBA, so I'll just say Anthony Davis. I have no idea. Kevin Durant. Are we talking about the youngest kid? Oh, I got it. Our guy with Jason Tatum.
No, I'm talking all time.
Okay.
In their rookie.
All time?
All time. Jordan, LeBron, Bird, Johnson, anybody in their prime to build a team around, who would it be?
I would take Jordan again.
I would take LeBron.
Well, I'm not doing this.
I think Jordan's the GOAT, but to build a team around, LeBron does everything. The guy's a 6'8" point guard. I mean, the guy plays every position. I lived in the 305 during the 4 years LeBron was here. It was electrifying. The guy was like on fire. And with all due respect to Jordan, if I'm a GM, I mean, I need that muscle, man, that firepower. And it's LeBron James.
Jordan made a lot of guys around him better. Scottie Pippen was never the same. Horace Grant, B.J. Armstrong.
That's a good point.
I mean,
they were all busts after when they left.
It made them a lot of money, too. Like Horace Grant goes to Orlando. He's shit. B.J. I mean, I remember what... He just took the team, but he also had that fire. He did that Last Dance documentary was so good because you're like, I already know everything about Michael Jordan, but even my brother, who's not a sports fan, was like, holy shit, this was good, because you just see he could not handle, like the little stories about the dinners where he gets snubbed by Chuck Daly at dinner, and now it's like I'm gonna beat him, which it sounds ridiculous, but that's what I love about him is he took that and made it. He does it on the golf course. He does it his whole life. So I like that because that's a mind that LeBron's just an unbelievable athlete, but that mind that Jordan has, he wasn't as tall as LeBron. He wasn't.
The Lakers win this year.
I don't really know. I'm not following, but from what I can tell, they're not. It's not looking good. I mean, it's early on, obviously, but they're not the same Lakers as they were a couple of years back for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I really believe, Brad, if they lose this year in the first or second round, I think they're going to trade LeBron. Why bring him back? Just build youth. He's going to be 37 next season.
Well, we'll watch and we'll play this back next time you're on, I think.
Hey, pleasure. Anytime, man. I've really enjoyed this. And all the best to you and your family. Thank you for having me. It's a really pleasure to be here. And thanks. I really enjoyed this.
I did too. Thank Ian Halperin again. All of his books are on Amazon, including his newest one, Controversy, Sex, Lies, and Dirty Money. The man knows where bodies are buried. You can see his face right there. He's got bodies buried right there in the backyard. But I thank him, and I thank Masses my title. You don't have those.
Take care, Brad. All the best.
See ya. And we thank Masses, my title sponsor, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching. Here's the Pitch.